What is going on, everyone? Thursday edition coming at you this is episode 22 of Locker Talk Live, by the way. And we are talking about previews, looking at some of the must watch games across Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston coming up. We got at least 6 games to talk about, maybe more. And I am joined by our Dallas managing editor, Shana Williford. Shana, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Ready for some Thursday night football and then Friday tomorrow. I'm excited.
I know. You got Thursday, you got Friday, you got Saturday. It's all coming. Week 2 is full steam ahead. And let's go ahead and go full steam ahead ourselves and talk about game 1. And we will start with the first game that we will talk about today is in Austin. It is Dripping Springs versus Hayes. Shane, I know you cover Dallas a lot. I know that's your main area of expertise, but what can you tell us about this matchup that maybe we should be paying attention to?
So, from what I know about this matchup, is we're going to see a lot of really physical play. Both teams are really good, and they typically show up and show out every time that they play. Um, I, I would say that Dripping Springs has a lot of fire, and I mean so does Hayes, but I think Dripping Springs has the oomph that it really takes to do well every time that they're on the field.
Yeah, Hayes was kind of that. I wouldn't call it maybe too much of a surprise, but um, somewhat of a surprise that they made it to the state semis last year. When you look at kind of the teams, especially in their district, you think Westlake, you think Lake Travis. I mean, Westlake, of course, didn't obviously make it all the way and win, but Lake Travis getting bounced in the first round. You don't really see Hayes making it as far as they did before losing to eventual state champion Katy. Um, and hey, now I guess it's now a new look for them. They come this year with a new mascot. They're the Hayes Hawks now, starting this year. Everything else kind of stays the same about them. But then you're right. You got Dripping Springs on the other hand, and quarterback Austin Novosad. He's a junior. He wasn't supposed to start last year, but throughout the year with some injuries, he ended up becoming the starting quarterback as a sophomore, and it kind of really shined. Is now kind of one of the top quarterbacks to watch in Central Texas, and so I think it's really going to come down to the Hayes running attack versus the Dripping Springs junior quarterback in Austin Novosad. So that one should be an interesting one to watch. I think it really is going to say a lot for both teams depending on how this game turns out. I myself will have my picks coming tomorrow, so I won't give away who I'm picking in this one yet. But this one will say a lot about these two teams. And heck, even if you lose this game, I think it's going to say a lot about your squad and and not necessarily in a bad way either. So I mean, I'm excited for this one to see who can come out on top on that one. Let's move on to unless you have anything else to say, let's move on to our second game. Shanna, you got anything you want to add before we move on?
I think the only thing I was gonna add was that Hayes is coming off of an incredible win last week, and that is definitely gonna give them some fire to put a stop to Dripping Springs. But it's gonna be a physical matchup, I think.
I think you're right on at that point. Let's move on to the next one. Probably, if you ask me, this is probably the one that I would say is least in doubt as far as when you see the two matchups, you're like, okay, well, this team is obviously the favorite, and so that's North Shore versus Klein Collins. North Shore, of course, coming off the win last week against Shadow Creek. Klein Collins last week coming not doing too well against an Atascocita team we'll talk about here in a little bit. Um, Sheena, am I right on this assumption that this is one where you look at the matchup, you're like, okay, North Shore is obviously the favorite here?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you know high school football, or Texas high school football, you know North Shore. And I think for me anyway, maybe because I'm not in that area, I know Klein Collins a lot less. But just looking at their season last year, they seem to have a lot of confidence building to do coming into this season. And I think playing against a team like North Shore is going to be a lesson for them for sure. And North Shore just they are always on fire. So I think it's you look at the matchup and you're like, okay, North Shore.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I think North Shore's defense is not going to be key just for them in this game, but probably for most of the season. I think they had the top rated high school player in the nation or the country, if I'm not mistaken, or at least Texas on their defensive side of the ball. So look for them. I don't foresee North Shore losing this unless they just sleepwalk through the whole game and they've slept walk through the whole week. This one should probably be a very easy and convincing win for North Shore, if you ask me. Shayna, last thoughts before we move on.
No, I just agree with you, North Shore. They are consistently producing powerhouse athletes, and I think we'll see that.
Perfect. Well, let's move on to your neck of the woods a little bit, and let's talk about Argyle versus Pleasant Grove. Argyle, the defending state champion. Pleasant Grove, had a very convincing win to start the season. Does Pleasant Grove stand a chance in this one, Shayna?
So I do think they stand a chance, as like most people know, they are both ranked number. No, sorry, Pleasant Grove is ranked number two in 4A Division One, and Argyle is ranked number one in 4A Division um, One or two. I don't know. Sorry, my notes are jumbled. Anyway, I think they do stand a chance. They face each other. They faced each other last season, and Pleasant Grove the closest match that Argyle did have. Argyle, as we know, they went undefeated last season, and they're going to be really hard to beat. Definitely, they last week they used two quarterbacks in their win, and I think you'll see that possibly both quarterbacks this game. But on the other hand, you got to see that Pleasant Grove came off of a big shutout last week, and that coming into Argyle, they're going to have that fire. They're going to want to do what they can to shut Argyle down because Argyle's always ahead of the game, and I think that Pleasant Grove definitely stands a chance for sure.
Sorry about that. I think they do stand a chance, but I think, and again, haven't really seen any updates on this, but their starting quarterback did go down for Pleasant Grove last week, and they had a true freshman, obviously, playing quarterback. He did perform well, but now you're talking if he has to play his second game of the year against Argyle compared to, Nashville, Arkansas type team, because they were playing an out-of-state team. I think that's going to be where you really see what this kid is made of. If quarterback Jarrett Halter, the freshman, has to play, because you talk about Argyle, they're dominant in the trenches, both on offense and defense, and so they like you said, they beat Fort Worth Nolan Catholic. They're not a pushover when it comes to private schools. They're one of the top private schools in the state when it comes to football. So I think Argyle will lean on their running back Landon Ferris. He had a great game against Nolan Catholic. I looked for him to kind of do more of the same. Like I said, they may continue to rotate quarterbacks at Argyle as well. So I don't know what they're going to do on that. But I think the key to this game now is what's the quarterback situation like at Pleasant Grove. I don't know if Akari Johnson, I don't know what kind of injury he has or if he's playing. So if Jarrett Halter has to come in as a freshman against arguably one of the best teams in 4A, that's going to be the real test right there. So, yeah, I think Pleasant Grove can hang, but there's a lot of factors that you really have to think of when they do hang. So yeah, any final thoughts before we move on that, Shayna?
Yeah, it really does just depend on the quarterback situation. I agree. And you also got to remember that Argyle did massively outscore their opponents last season. So it'll be an interesting game to see.
Yeah, it always feels like it's like Argyle and Carthage are like the 4A kings when it comes to football. You're always seeing them in the state championship. It feels like, and it almost feels like we're on that same course again. So, yeah, if I had to pick, that's probably the team I would pick to win, just with all the factors aside. But let's go ahead and move on to a Houston versus Dallas matchup. Atascocita, who we've talked about briefly, they won their first game against Klein Collins last week, and then they're facing Allen, who's also starting off 1-0. Allen, of course, we know one of the powers of high school football here in Texas. Atascocita is always kind of right there, but they can never get over that hump. You know, when you think of like the North becoming and being in the North Shores and stuff like that. Shana, let's start with you. Keys to victory. I know you're Dallas. So I know you're going to talk a lot about Allen here. What are some keys? What should we be looking for from the Allen side of things?
So I really think we need to be looking at the new quarterback for Allen. He had a really great game last week, and he has great players surrounding him. I think that we also got to consider though that last season they did face each other, and Allen did win 52-27, and I think uh, they're gonna want some revenge. I really do believe that. Um, yes, Allen beat Plano West last week, but that's Allen versus Plano West, and it's kind of a given. Um, and I think a player to watch is going to be definitely Gavin Session. Is it Gavin Session or Gavin Sessions?
Let's see if I can figure out that name while you continue talking there.
Okay, yeah. Um, because last year versus Allen, I'm pretty sure he threw, or not threw, but he had a total of 498 total yards. And they're gonna, I think if Allen wants to stand a chance against them with a new quarterback, they're gonna have to put a stop to his game, definitely.
Yeah, so it is Gavin Session. I went ahead and looked. So Gavin Session. Um, but yeah, so um, he Gavin said. Speaking of him, had a good. We mentioned he had a good game against Klein Collins, but Klein Collins isn't Allen, right? So um, Allen came. They had a 56-30 win against Plano East, which I think you talked about. You know, running back Jalen Jenkins, like you mentioned, a beast. Um, this is a game I think, if I'm not mistaken, Allen blew out Atascocita last year. I don't know if it will be a blowout this year, but I do think it might be some of the similar score that we saw here last. Kind of the around a 20-point game. You know, Atascocita will put up some points. I don't think they will be able to get past Allen though. I think just everything Allen has building. Um, yeah, I can't see why Allen wouldn't get past this one. Um, and hey, Allen's never lost a game at Eagle Stadium yet. Why would tomorrow be any different? So, um, I I I think Atascocita will probably hang with them for about maybe 2.5 quarters, and then maybe around that mid third quarter is when Allen will really just pull away. If I had to take a guess,
Yeah,
yeah, go
definitely.
ahead. Okay,
Oh no,
let's.
I was just gonna say definitely. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but they'll give Allen a run for their money for sure.
I would agree. Let's move on to probably the two biggest games. If I had to guess, there's probably some bigger ones. There could be a few other bigger ones, but two of the bigger games, at least across Texas. First one is in your neck of the woods. Denton Ryan versus Denton Geyer. Proverbial rivalry returns. Denton Ryan, of course, state champions. Denton Geyer just short last year. What do you see in this one, Shayna?
I mean, this is only going to be the third time the two have faced each other in 7 seasons. And you also have to remember that Ryan has won the last two matchups. In 2015, it was 31-28, I believe, and then last year, 23-20. I think it's going to definitely be close. But I think the key players at Ryan are really going to set the tone for the game, with Ryan having Anthony Hill Jr. And Austin Jordan, as well as Khalid Hicks. So I really think Ryan is going to be the team to watch here. Now, Denton Geyer, don't get me wrong, they're amazing. It's two powerhouses going at each other. Um, Geyer did allow only 209 yards of total offense against Hebron. So I think Geyer's defense is going to play a huge role here, but Ryan's offense is ultimately the bigger uh, power to beat.
Yeah, and I think you have to look at, I mean, Denton Ryan last week, super impressive against a really good Longview team. Their defense just came out on fire. I mean, a 40-7 victory over Longview. I think that opened a lot of people's eyes on if Denton Ryan can kind of repeat or at least try to. And now they play Denton Geyer, who the quarterback Jackson Arnold. He's going to be making his second start. Having to go up against this Denton Ryan defense, and you know. He didn't have a bad game. I mean, obviously they won. Denton Geyer, 16 of 27 for 167 yards. But now you had to turn around and play Denton Ryan and this talent compared to Hebron. No offense to Hebron, but you're talking about the defending state champions here. Um, yeah, I think the defense with Marquise Hill, he had 9 tackles, 5 for loss, and 4 sacks last year, or not last year, last week. Look for him to add to
Yeah.
that against Denton Geyer. You know, especially coming in second start for a QB. I think Denton Ryan's defensive front is going to be eating come Friday. So that's kind of going to be the key is Denton Ryan's defense versus Denton Geyer's offense. If this quarterback can't get anything going, it's going to be another dominant victory for Denton Ryan, just as it was last week.
Yeah, and I think also it's important to remember that they do have 60 consecutive wins in the regular season. So if they do lose to Ryan, that breaks a pretty big streak for them. And you know they want that. They want those bragging rights in Denton, and they want to keep that streak going.
Yeah, that's something to look forward to. That's definitely another good talking point on that one. Let's move to the final game of the night. Judson versus Lake Travis. Judson, as we know, kind of upset DeSoto last week, 35-28. I don't think a lot of people, were thinking Judson would have a bad year, but when you talk about DeSoto, kind of a state power, people didn't expect that win. And so they kind of put people on notice and be like, hey, yeah, this Justin team, we're for real. But now, right away, they have to turn around and play another state power in Lake Travis, who also started off 1-0 with a pretty impressive 40-28 win over Arlington Martin last week. So both of these teams come off of wins against DFW teams, Shana, and now they play each other. Of course, when you think of Lake Travis, always right in there in the hunt. Had that disappointing end to the season last year. I think they had that bitter taste in their mouth. I think that's going to transcend through the season. But what do you see for this matchup happening tomorrow?
So I agree with the bitter taste, but also on the other end of that, Judson would have a bitter taste as well because, Lake Travis consistently puts them out of playoff contentions in 2017, 2018, and 2019. I think that it was very surprising to see Judson come in and, shut down DeSoto of all teams and, to outgain them in total yards. But I think that just like North Shore, when you think of Texas high school football, you also know Lake Travis very well, and you know that they're producing some of the highest quality athletes that Texas has seen. So I think it'll be an interesting game. Judson, like you said, nobody expects them to come in and have a bad season, but back-to-back powerhouses is going to be exhausting for them.
Yeah, and when you really think about it, when you go back and look at that game, it was kind of it's kind of two things that they're really going to have to build on if they want to end up being Lake Travis. And so first, that's a continued dominant defensive performance. Judson's defense showed up and showed out against that DeSoto squad, and then it's going to be upping their offensive game, right? So if you look at it. Judson had a great first half, and second half they struggle a little bit on offense. So they're going to have to have a 4 quarters of consistency on offense if they're going to want to beat this Lake Travis team. Because if hey, 1 week, especially week 1, that can kind of slide. But going up against 2 powerhouses in back-to-back weeks, you can't have a kind of a lull in offensive firepower for basically 2 quarters and hope to get that win. Now, of course, hey, if their defense, shows up again like that, then yes, it is possible. But I think they probably said that they would probably tell you, hey, our offense has to improve if we're going to want to come up against this Lake Travis squad. I mean, you look at Lake Travis. I think Lake Travis themselves is on a 16-game regular season winning streak. So, it's not like they there's some pushover, and they're going to rely on their offense, of course, to get through it. But this is definitely one where I think if you would have asked me last week to pick this game before Friday of last week, I would have picked Lake Travis easily. But now with this, I'm not going to tell you who I'm picking yet, of course, because I'm going to make those picks tomorrow. But now I'm a little more reserved about who I'm going to pick. So, that one I am super excited for. And if you can watch that game, folks, let me tell you, you're going to want to watch that game. Final thoughts on this one, Shayna?
No, I agree. I would have definitely seen the schedule last week. I would have just been like Travis all the way. But it definitely makes you think a second time about the game that's going to happen.
Well, that is going to do it for our show today, folks. Again, every Thursday we'll have different VYPE employees, I guess you want to call us, on the show. We had Will last week, Shayna this week. Heck, maybe next week we'll get Scott back on the show on a more regular basis. But that is our show. Tune in tomorrow. We'll make some picks. We'll pick the winners for these games and maybe a few others. And of course, stay tuned for our website for other kind of picks. I know we're doing Austin San Antonio centric picks, which Will and Josh Cook are leading 3-2. Shayna, you and me got 2 out of 3 right last week, so we've got some work to do this upcoming week. So, any last things you wanna say before we head out for today, Shayna?
No, I think that's all. I think the only other interesting story everybody's already talking about with Duncanville. So I think that's pretty much it for us.
Now, Shayna, have they picked a new opponent for week 3 yet? Because I know they did come out and say, yeah, we're not playing that game next week. Have they found an opponent yet? Or are they still looking for one?
I believe they're still looking for one. Don't quote me on that. But I do believe they're still looking for one.
Oh man, I cannot believe that Bishop Sycamore story. That is probably one of the craziest stories to really just kind of talk about. I mean, yeah, you got a team playing 2 games within 48 hours, and then now they have Duncanville on the schedule. They had Duncanville on the schedule, but oh man, yeah, what a crazy time for week 1 of high school football. Well, Shayna, thank you for joining me on the show today. You are welcome. By the way, for those that don't know, you'll be on every Monday now at noon, where we'll talk Austin, San Antonio, and Dallas recaps. So we'll talk about the games that happened that past week on Mondays at noon. Shayna and Scott will be joining us on that show. So definitely tune in for those if you are a Dallas, Austin, or San Antonio area fan listening in, so you can hear what we have to say about the games happening in that area. Shayna, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, until tomorrow at noon, where we do our pick'em shows, I'm Wac, that's Shayna, and this has been our Thursday show. Have a good one, everyone.